follow the line down of absolute truth and that there is an absolute moral law. If you're intellectually honest, it will lead you to wrestling with, well, there's a God then.
Okay, welcome to UnApologetic. We are here for another episode where we are having great conversations about how you can share confidently the reason for the hope that you have. And I'm Tim. Once again, I'm here with Jonathan Gullo.
Hello.
CEO and founder of Sophos Ministries. You still the CEO and founder?
I'm rolling with it.
That's the truth?
Now, yeah, I think so.
Yep, great. Well, that's good because we are talking about truth
Great.
today. Nice little segue
I like
there.
that.
What is truth? Now, we've actually been talking about a whole bunch of different apologetic topics. We've covered what is apologetics. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Can I trust the Bible? How do I prove the existence of God? If God is good, why does suffering exist? And now we're hitting what is truth. And I want to start with a comment that came through the YesHeIs community chat somewhere on our socials. And this person says, hello. It's been a few instances where I've shared my faith in Jesus with some of my close, unsaved friends. And the reaction I've gotten is that they are happy for me and my faith. But it's just not for them. I know it's not my job to save them, but I still end up feeling ineffective at my part. Any advice? I feel like when we're talking about like truth, and even apologetics, like how do we give a reason for the hope that we have? I feel frustrated about this, that I can do my best job, with a really kind approach, and I'm given the goods, given some really good ideas, given a well-packaged argument, and then it hits this point in the conversation where like, cool, man, well, yep, what's true for you is true for you, and what's true for me is true for me. So great, I'm happy for you, man. Go for it. I'm out.
Yep. Yep.
Sucks all the life and air out of the conversation. What's the go with that?
Yeah. Now, this is new in terms of throughout the history of good apologetic discussion. This tension we face is pretty new, best we can tell, at least in written literature. And several reasons for that. This whole idea of, my truth. Because it's such a cop-out, to be honest, like philosophically anyways. Because truth by its definition, whether you agree with it or not, is, that's the nature of truth. So it's objectively true.
Whether you believe it or not.
You can believe it or not, you can disagree with it or not. But that's the nature of what something is true.
Right.
So to then say, well, it's not true for me, it's like, you can say that, you've strung some words together, but it doesn't change the reality of truth. So for someone to say, okay, well, there is no absolute truth, well, that is an absolute truth statement. So when someone says there's no absolute truth, I'm like, are you absolutely sure about that? Because you've just cancelled out your own argument by saying there is no absolute truth. You can only say that if you're absolute about something, which means there is absolute truth. So it's
so these circular arguments or circular unarguments.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It just doesn't
unreasonable.
Matter. Yeah.
So and so this and reason Christianity has such wonderful things to speak into this is it is a faith that has claim on absolute truth. It's never pitched itself as an option.
Right.
It's an exclusive truth claim, which in part is why Christianity can be offensive in its claims.
Yeah.
Because if something is true, I've got to wrestle with that. Now you can choose to not abide by truth and to not live by truth and to not, walk in the way of truth. That's fine, but it doesn't change the fact that Christianity makes some truth claims. And so why that's modern.
Well, just before we move on, I just really want to, because this is something I've really struggled to get my head around, and I was chatting with a friend this week, and he was like, it's beetroot and buses, and I was like, what? There's beetroot truth and there's bus truth, and I'm like, I don't understand. And he's like, well, do you like beetroot? And I'm like, yeah, I love beetroot. He's like, my wife hates beetroot. And he's like, actually, I know someone who's like allergic to beetroot. And actually, that may be more of like an objective truth.
Yeah.
But that's preference. Like it's what I feel.
You're not dealing with truth.
Then there's bus truth. It's like, However, if you like getting hit by a bus or you don't like getting hit by a bus, whatever your preference, if you get hit by a bus, you're going to die at speed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, that's such a really clear way of putting it. So is that what you're saying is sort of, because you're about to say like this is sort of a new thing. Are you saying that over time there's sort of these fundamental, is it like almost a law? Is that kind of how we should think about it? Like these things,
yes,
as in a law of physics.
There is a law.
Because that's what a bus is. It's just like, I can't change physics, whether I like it or not. Like it just exists outside of me, no matter whether my opinion. Yeah,
there's certainly a law around this, but the problem is now it's the different use of words.
Yeah.
And so, people have hoodwinked or stolen the word truth, what they're referring to is preference. And or my opinion, and we've stolen the word truth. And that's one of the problems with language and words, and the meaning of words can change. So what we're trying to deal with is go back to what is the idea we're trying to get at, irrespective of what you call it. What's the idea? There is something absolute, immutable, unchangeable, bedrock.
Yeah.
And so again, this is the part that's new is, I guess, in the modern era, what's called the therapeutic self, right? This is idea of self-identity. I am who I want to be.
Right.
And that is a modern thing. I'm not saying people haven't expressed that or felt that, but certainly how it's propagated as a virtue and it's almost
culturally acceptable.
Almost culturally acceptable, and its own truth now, that somehow it's been said so much that things that really are a subjective read or take or opinion, we use the word truth. And part of the, important to get clarity of terms here, part of the issue with discussing this is the current, I guess, public discussion. We're not on a truth quest, really. It's been said we're more on a happiness quest. And so people aren't really wrestling with what is true anymore. They're wrestling with what's good for me. What do I like?
And that's preference again, isn't it?
Preference, you bet.
Wow.
And so preference has overtaken the desire for truth. So again, there's opportunity here for Christianity to say there is truth, but also it's important to know it. Because, and this is Jesus, it's like, that's truth, right? And if you know the truth, Jesus said something massive. He goes, it's going to set you free. And so I think a lot of people are wondering why things aren't working out how they hoped, even though they're going so hard after their truth. It doesn't matter if it's your truth. If it's not true, you're trying to organize your life or your reason or your understanding around something that has no grounding. And so you might have your own morality. You might just pick what I think is good, what I think is evil. But there has to be an absolute good or evil. Now, you might disagree with the absolute good or evil and come up with your own and then wondering why you're experiencing the result. That's what Jesus would say, you'll know a tree by its fruit. And so Jesus didn't just give arbitrary opinion about the universe and how he thinks things should be. He taught how things are, that there is a way things are designed and built and ordered and structured.
Yep. Just to really lay down the foundation of like objective versus subjective truth, could you just help to articulate the fact that when someone's articulating that statement of what's true for me is true for me, and what's true for you is true for you, is actually a helpful statement to prove that objective truth exists?
I wouldn't say there's like a zinger, like a gotcha there.
Right.
Because, and I'm sure someone smarter than me would have one.
Yeah.
And every time I've tried to work this out, say on uni campuses through one of our Logos forums, there really is a nonchalant, non-caring to the idea that there is a truth. And this is my point. It's gone so far culturally that the appetite for truth, people don't even know what that is anymore. But the problem with that is when there's an unmooring from reality, let's use that word, from truth, from reality, things spiral out of control because there's no fabric to build any life on. And so as a culture, that's why nihilism, hopelessness, meaningless is so rife, because people are trying to build some kind of fruitful, fulfilling life on non-absolutes.
Yeah. And
constantly changing what is true. The fact they're not even thinking about truth. So for example, let's say in years gone by, for example, people would go to church. People go to church to make sense of their suffering. They go there to be right. Hang on, what's true again? I want to wrap my head around what's true to make sense of what I'm going through.
Kind of anchor my life.
Right. You got it.
Okay.
Now there's a lot of people will then turn to religion or faith or go to church, for instance, to feel happy. So they don't want to
Right.
know what is true. It's like, help me feel better.
Mm.
Now, I'm not saying that's wrong in and of itself, but they are two radically different things. So
Yeah.
when I discover the truth, I might not like it,
Yeah.
know? And that's just part of it. And
Yeah.
and I mean, what do people often say? Truth hurts. Now, I know I'm dancing around different ideas, but it's a big concept to get your mind around. And this isn't certainly a thing that Christianity has just wrestled with. I mean, I think arguably most religions kind of popped out in some regards of searching for some measure of what is and what is reality and how do I engage in a healthy way. But certainly what set Christianity apart from the very beginning, and what part of its apologetic is built on, is that it does claim that there is an absolute, that you can know right and wrong, that there is a moral law and there is someone behind it. There was a moral law giver. And that if you dare to be intellectually honest enough and follow the questions where they actually lead, and you're not looking for a predetermined outcome, you're like, I want to search this out. We're seeing more and more these days. In the past 20 years, the idea of the new atheist really took the intellectual world by storm. But in the past half a decade, man, the amount of prominent, outspoken atheists that their goal wasn't to get a desired outcome. They really did follow liberal thought. They wanted to know what is true. They're turning to Christianity because at the end of the day, Christianity is a truth claim. Peter, we've been talking about this passage from Peter saying there is reason for faith. Christianity sides with the idea of reason, of logic. And that in itself is an apologetic now to our culture. It's a witness to our culture because not many things can claim that. We live in a postmodern age where everything's relative.
Yeah.
And there was a time where that was fashionable to think that, but where it's led the world at large, particularly modern culture, has certainly been extremely harmful. And so I think the return to this idea of reason, of logic, of absolute truth is that well, Jesus said it'll set you free. There's liberty in truth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So what is the logical argument for absolute truth?
What's the logical argument for absolute truth? So in the gospel, John himself, in his old age, he wrote about trying to explain who Jesus was. And he used the Greek word logos, which is where we get the word logic, to explain who Jesus was. And which is a fascinating choice of words, right?
That's fascinating.
He said, in the beginning, we've had this translation in a lot of our Bibles. In the beginning was the word, capital W. But that the Greek word it got it from was the word for word was the logos, which is where we get logic.
Yeah.
So saying in the beginning was logic, the logos. It was right there in the beginning. The organizing principle, the thing that everything is built on, that for the fine tuning of the universe, the galaxies, the fact that, we have a solar system that operates, that Earth is perfectly tilted on its axis, that it can sustain life, the fact that there is life, the fact that we can reproduce, all these things, right? There's perfect design around this. There are some ordered laws, and we're discovering them, but they clearly exist. You talk to any engineer, they can't build off relativity. They have to know that something is solid to which to build on. So John gets this idea of logos. Now, that isn't a biblical word. John stole that from essentially the Greek philosophers, Greek culture at the time. There's a fact. Now, roll with me for a second. This is fascinating. Okay, so a couple of hundred years before Christ, you had your big prominent Greek philosophers. You got your Aristotles, your Platos, your Socrates. They would all often build off one another's ideas, but they had developed this idea of the logos, that there was a primary organizing absolute to the universe, and as again through the means of using their philosophy, using wisdom, there was liberty in thought. They studied things and they realized this is all ordered and it's pointing somewhere. The structure to the universe.
Wow.
And eventually they got to a point saying there is a singularity. There is a logos. There is a prime mover. There is a first. And obviously this within the context of Greek culture, had all their gods.
Isn't that fascinating?
Pantheisms. And so eventually by the time Jesus came along, the Greeks at large, best we can tell from history, had really abandoned the dominance of the idea of the logos because they couldn't stomach the idea that eventually if you followed reason where it led, it would lead to a one God. And of
Really?
course,
So they abandoned it.
well, they abandoned it as being this dominant thought because they didn't like that it led to a who. They couldn't. Their reason led them there. So
didn't they have gods? And
they had God. That's what I mean. And so they had to stay loyal to their culture and their gods at the time
it was questioning the foundations
of Greek society
and of their like religion in terms of the
Now,
pantheon of gods.
Pantheon of gods, right? And you see this tension out often as the Greek culture unfolded because they had this beautiful idea of logic that sprung out, and it's not as if no one else understood logic in any other culture, but they had the one society whose values allowed the ideas of logic and reason to grow.
Yeah,
and it built their
I've
culture.
seen that in the it's the culture of philosophy and all of that. The thing that's standing out to me here is that, and I just want to check this is what you're saying, that it wasn't just a cerebral thing, that it in their thinking, was it actually leading towards like an identity, like a who? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That they'd thought about it enough that it's just like, hey, this isn't just sort of like, oh, we've got a oneness of thought and there's sort of ideas that link the universe, but it's actually sort of linked to like prime mover, designer, like a person, an identity.
Yeah, and they wrestled with that.
Right.
Because then that would cause them to question
like their own
history, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So by the time Jesus comes along, that it was obviously Alexander had gone all around the world, so that's why when Jesus ministered, a lot of them spoke Greek. So this idea was around there. So Jesus comes along and starts going, "What I say to you is truth." He says, "I am the truth." It's big claims, right?
Yeah.
So all these guys believe him. He obviously authenticated his claims by rising from the dead, and we dealt with this in an earlier episode. So let's just keep rolling with this. So you got all these guys that were convinced the truth put on flesh and walked among us. They all die for their faith. And then you got John, the last living original apostle. Everyone's written about Jesus' life. They give an orderly accounts of his teachings, the pathway of his life, his resurrection. So he's like, I'm going to write something different. Okay, not going to copy the synoptic gospels. He's going to write his own. And so it's kind of like he does in his version, a modern version of Genesis 1, talking about the creation in the beginning. And he uses this idea. He steals the idea of logos. He found a Greek word that his culture understood. And he's like, in the beginning was the logos. So it's a shadow of Genesis.
So good.
And he goes, he was in the beginning with God. He was God. And all things were made through him. There was nothing that was made without this idea of logos. Now, any engineer would go, yeah, you can't make anything without an idea that this is absolute and you're going to build off
gravity,
this.
physics.
Right, all the laws. And he's like, nothing was made that wasn't made without the logos. And he said, and then the logos became flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld him. He says, we heard him speak, we touched him, we saw him. The logos clothed himself in the human form and walked among us. So isn't that profound? John takes this idea of logos, of logic, of reason, of the absolute, the fundamental truth, and says it's not just an idea, it's a who. And he walked among us and he shaped the galaxies. He breathed existence into order. Like this is, so I set that up to say, so Christianity's got some big claims,
That's
right?
huge.
So we're not just following like a prophet or a teacher. Like we believe that, nah, man, this is God in the flesh. So when Jesus was teaching, he's not just, again, randomly espousing philosophical ideas. He was the logos. So what he's saying is true. Now, you might not like it, but he's saying this is how the universe has been designed and made. And if you want to walk in accordance with how the designer designed it, follow my teaching, follow my way.
Yeah.
So that's why Christians to take this seriously are like, man, this isn't simply do I like it or not. That's why like there's a lot in Christianity I don't necessarily like. It's hard, it's difficult.
Yeah.
But not my preference. Yeah. I mean, take for instance, enemy love. That makes like to one degree, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
And that's a wrestle. But it's like, well, Jesus seems to know what he's talking about. And the Logos would say that's the right way of going about it. Fascinating stuff.
Wow. So when I'm sitting down with my friend and he says, it's true for me, it's true for me, what's true for you is true for you. And I feel like that's like just a big stone wall to an argument, because it's almost like, maybe it's like how atheists feel when we pull out the faith card or something. It's just like, we can't go anywhere from here. Like, where do we go from there? Is it the fact of like, do we get really practical and go, well, hey, if you may not believe it, I understand, but hey, Jesus said he was the truth. And he said, if you follow my teachings, you'll be like a man who builds his house on the rock. So do you then sort of start to get really practical and go, hey, well, Jesus said things like love your enemies. Seems a bit kind of counterintuitive, but story. Let me tell you about a time when I blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah.
I think it's certainly part of it. This is where it comes back to the point of apologetics in this age, though, is you got to ascertain primarily if you're going to have this discussion, who are you talking to? Is it someone are they a genuine seeker after truth? Like, are they wanting what's true? Is there an appetite for truth?
Yeah.
Or is it they have an appetite to prove? And I've got to ask this myself too, to just have my preference affirmed.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Because they are two different approaches to a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So if someone has a genuine appetite for, I just want what's true, and I think more than ever now, people are kind of leaning towards that. You can straight away point, well, let's put Jesus to the test, because he's either true or he's not. So let's wrestle with his teaching. And again, this is what this whole series of podcasts have been about, of looking why we can trust in the resurrection of Jesus, that there is a God, there's good cues towards God. Let's put it to the test. If someone's had a genuine appetite and humility and curiosity for truth, that's one line. But the other side is if someone isn't after that, it's almost an impossible conversation to have,
right?
Because to them that's not really that's not the win for them. They're not seeking to align a life by an absolute truth. They simply want something that's going to be therapeutic to their idea of self.
What are cues that people are in that place?
Sorry, say that question again.
What are the cues I could pick up that, this person actually isn't seeking truth, they're just after their own preference or their own happiness?
Ready for this? This is radical thought. Ask them.
Right.
Like, ask a genuine question. Are you on a truth quest or a happiness quest?
Yeah.
And I know that might seem simplistic, but even asking the question, and this is a big point, even asking the question is a helpful tact. Sometimes I think of it through this way, and here could be a tact for people to consider. If I've got like a zinger in my brain, like I've got a gotcha line, before I say it, I sometimes will reword it in my brain as a question. So rather than telling a person this is how it is, I'll reframe it and then say it or ask it as a question.
So what would be an example of that? Like, so you're wanting really to be like, hey, you after truth or happiness?
Okay, I'd ask it like this. I'd say something like, what do you think truth is?
Right. Or
for you, happiness, where have you got your idea of happiness from? Because the good thing is God has given everyone logic. Everyone's got it. It's there. And sometimes you've got to help people peel back the layers and see it. So and you're not trying to get a zinger. You're not trying to back someone in a corner and go, gotcha, But you do want to try and encourage them to begin to think, because we're dealing with truth, right? The truth either is or it isn't. Yeah. We think there is. We want to get people's brains start thinking about it. And it's in there. So sometimes it's a beautiful tact of apologetics, rather than us trying to prove that there is truth. Truth is self-revelatory. Is you want to start getting people poking holes in their own falsehoods. So get them to, a good apologist will not just have good answers, but will have even better questions for people.
Yeah.
And not from an arrogant position, but to generally ask, who taught you that? Or where did you learn that from?
Yeah.
Or this, what do you ultimately want in life? Or what do you think is the most ultimate good in life? And here's the thing, most people haven't thought through that. This is the tricky part. Most people give a platitude, some easy one-liner, just don't do bad, or just be nice to people, and then you start going, well, what do you mean by that? Like if someone's generally having the conversation.
The next question, right?
What do you mean by good?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
How successful are you at always being good?
Yeah.
Is that working for you?
You've got it. Now you've got it. Because what you're dealing with here, you keep pointing people towards what are they using? They're using their logic then.
Yeah.
And what's logic? Well, it's a gift from God. God gave it to us. There is reason behind things.
Yeah.
And so I think, and if you do it honestly, now, again, I want to say sometimes people aren't in the appetite or the mood to go there. But if someone genuinely, if it gets to the point of you discussing absolute truth, keep asking the questions. Now, again, this isn't to get a zinger, got you into a corner, But God has given people the gift of rationality and reason. And if you can start seeing that spark come alive in them, my confidence is eventually that leads someone, they eventually will have to wrestle with where did this absolute come from. So, and this is what's despairing for me and why I think Christians should be passionate about pursuing their understanding of what truth is the consequences on the other side of this are stark.
What are the consequences?
So I've sat down, I've sat down with so many uni students, particularly as we do these Logos forums. And when they generally engage with these conversations, they don't want there to be an absolute. And that's the bottom line. They don't want it to be true.
Why don't people want an absolute?
Because then you have to give an account. You have to acknowledge that maybe I'm not good. And I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah.
And so what it leads in is, and this is so tragic, and it's so tragic that they're convinced there is no absolute good or evil. And you try and sociologicalize it away. You give different, and they'll say that everything's culturally conditioned. Good over this culture is evil over that culture. And that's just the nature of it. It's totally, and I asked that, I go, well, based off what value system? Like you've just made a proposition that good and bad is relative. So that's an absolute stance.
Yeah.
Where did you get that absolute stance from?
Or you calling it good in our culture and bad in their culture. You're making an absolute, but that's got to then be based on, are you the center of the universe?
Exactly.
Well, you've got to call onto some higher power.
You've got it 100%. And that's why people don't want it to be true. You have to acknowledge that. To follow the line down of absolute truth and that there is an absolute moral law, if you're intellectually honest, it will lead you to wrestling with, oh, there's a God then.
Which is what the Greeks did.
Yeah.
Surely that's where
that's why they abandoned
got
it.
to.
So they got to the point, they used their reason and their logic, and they got there. Now, here's the beautiful side of the story of truth, okay? So it was the Western world ran with this idea of logic and truth, and then it gave us the great sciences, the great technologies Now, not as if there weren't other great inventors and great thinkers in other cultures, but why didn't it take off? Like there are other great scientists in Asian cultures and African cultures in the Middle East. Why was it though that this took off predominantly in the Western world? And there's a lot of history that's been written about this, why, but one of the arguments of that is there wasn't a, culturally and value-wise, the idea of there being a singular truth wasn't seen as a high virtue in some of these cultures. They had other high virtues, and they weren't bad, they were just other high virtues. And so say if a great scientist came along and invented something in one particular culture, why didn't it completely cause a renaissance in their cultures of healthcare and of technology and labor-saving devices? Why did this all predominantly take off in the Western world? Well, because it was founded on this idea that there is a logic, a logos, and you can know it. And on the fabric of that, it'll help you want to ease the suffering that human beings have brought on themselves by how can we invent things, and how can we design things, and how can we build things, and how can we make things better, and how can we self-assess things? So the logic became this incredible gift to humanity. And what's unfortunate is it seems to be unraveling in societies that no longer have an absolute. We don't see much things progressing forward. We see often things regressing. Because their foundation for an absolute has bottomed out for them.
That's what we mentioned in a previous episode about a flower being cut off from its source.
Correct.
It's it's still beautiful for a bit, but because it's cut off from its source of life,
got it,
and focus, then it starts to die.
Well, why is it that Christianity gave us all the great education institutions like schools and universities? Why is it Christianity gave us hospitals and aged care? Christianity's given us so much. The idea was this flow-on effect from the logic. It was the Christian civilizations that wanted to encourage literacy rates in their populations en masse. I'm talking as a culture. I'm not saying there wasn't pockets of it over the world, but en masse it became a cultural thing. Is because at its root there's this idea that truth is absolute and you can know it, and it leads to flourishing. Because if you know truth, it will set you free. You're not bound by superstition. You're not bound by culture. You're not bound by old wives' tales or myth. It sets you free. But if you don't care about truth, you'll still be left captive to, well, this is how we've always done it, and this is how we always think, and this is what I prefer.
Okay. Just as a final thing, you just quoted you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And maybe the reason that people don't want to know the truth is because they think the truth will hold them captive.
Yeah.
The truth will hold me to account.
mhm.
I will be punished because of the truth, and I don't. I want to get off the hook, or I don't want to face up to the truth. How can we explain this to people? That yes, having a set of rules, having boundaries, leads to flourishing. Like, how can we logically convince people that? Like, what's the logical argument towards that?
That's a great question. The way I kind of see it, a few little kind of examples to help this out. I've got some friends who I know you're a great musician. I am so inspired by musicians who become just experts at their craft. They shred. So if you think about the piano student that devotes like 8 hours a day. Now, one level, you might be like, man, 8 hours a day. Think of all they've given up. Think of all the time socializing, hanging with their friends, chilling out, watching television, whatever it is, to devote themselves to this skill. Now, you might think, well, that's a huge restraint. And it is. They've restrained themselves to a discipline. But look at what was liberated from them. That would otherwise, the fruit of that. They would have laid dormant. That skill would have laid dormant, but they set it free and they are flourishing. It wasn't because they got rid of all limitations. It's because they knit themselves to the right limitations.
Yeah.
Limitations that brought freedom to their gift.
Yeah.
So this idea of freedom is the idea. It's not having nothing binding me. No. It's about choosing the right things to hold you, the right limits.
Illustration of jazz improvisation in this, because, you hear jazz improvisation and it's like, I mean, whether you like jazz or not, whether it's your preference, it's like, it's undeniable just skill and freedom. You're just like, whoa, this is crazy. That person's, or a guitar solo people are sharing. It's just, they're not choosing any notes. It's not just like, oh, throw the bounds off and have no shackles. No, it's like there's scales and there's modes and there's like,
according to a law.
There's laws that are governing this like beautiful freedom that you hear and that inspires. And
well, you think of a marriage, okay? Let's get real human about this. The idea of a beautiful, flourishing marriage, many dynamics to it, but there's certainly a core one is exclusivity.
Yeah.
So intimacy is a fruit of exclusivity.
Yeah.
So that might seem like, oh, what a limit, you're stuck to one person for all your life. It's like, yeah, but what it released was experience of trust and love and closeness and intimacy and human bonding that I would never have been liberated to experience if it wasn't for the right limitations. So true freedom isn't I'm free of limits. It's embracing the right limits. And that's what truth does. So truth, it sets a bound. Said this is true, this is not. It's an absolute.
Yeah.
But if you abide by truth, you walk in it. Jesus said it's the path to freedom.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want that?
Wow, that's amazing. Well, just to wrap up, are there any resources that people can read, get engaged with around this?
Because obviously when you get into this, you start getting into the philosophy space. So you got some incredible guys who deal with this brilliantly, like William Lane Craig.
Oh, yeah.
He's written a lot of stuff. He does some good podcasts. He's a brilliant thinker around this. N.T. Wright has written a lot around these ideas as well. Really brilliant. They are two great authors to begin with. Difficult to read in some parts, like it's very dense, but they'll certainly get your brain wrestling with some of these big ideas.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of, I guess, this first season of UnApologetic. And thank you so much for your wisdom and encouragement over this whole video series. And if you're connected with YesHeIs or Sophos, this is just the first of a great future into just unpacking these ideas in really helpful ways. So particularly with Sophos, Jono, tell us how people can stay connected.
Yeah, well, obviously all the goodies online. You can find us Sophos Ministries there. But a big thing we're passionate about is seeing Logos forums, one of our, outward-facing events at universities and churches, young adult ministries are in Australia. So if people are interested in finding out more, maybe wanted to host one or attend one, love to get some feedback. Love to hear from people. Yep. We run a conference every year, either on the Sunshine Coast or in Canberra. They've been our two locations at the moment for Sophos Conference, which is essentially an opportunity to train and disciple people in apologetic thinking. And also we wanted to create a real online community for see people who wanted to engage with this type of thinking and conversation around culture and truth, and connect you with other wonderful ministries that are happening, particularly in Australia at the moment. It's a really great era for people who are passionate about thinking and about giving a defense for the faith to be connecting with one another. We certainly want to help in that space.
Yeah, I love all the work that you're doing. It's so important in this space.
Thanks, mate.
So thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
God bless you.